Norse mythology is the set of religious stories from their pagan religion which gave meaning to the Vikings' lives. These Vikings were seafaring riders, conquerors, explorers, settlers, and traders, and for them, the world as they found it was enchanted. The Norse pantheon has roots in the religion and mythology of Germanic people who migrated into Europe. The source for the myth and many other stories from Norse mythology is the Prose Edda, an Icelandic compendium written by Snorri Sturluson around 1220 CE. The myth served to reflect their lives and values. In the beginning of time, there was two realms, Niflheim and Muspelheim. Muspelheim was a world of ice, fog, and mist, while Niflheim was the world of fire. Niflheim encroached upon the icy realms. The rivers thawed, defrosted, and revealed the giant Ymir, and he was to become the father of all the giants. There was also a cow Udumla, and Ymir took the feeding upon her teats. Udumla would lick the salty eyes of Muspelheim, and by doing this, she revealed the first god Buri. The three sons of Buri killed Ymir and threw him into the void, turning his body parts into the earth, creating the great tree of life, namely Yggdrasil, where there were 9 worlds. On top of creating the world as new, the gods would go ahead and create us. To protect the humans, they were encased into the realm of Midgard. Jotunheim was a home of the giants, including the oldest race of frost giants from Niflheim, the world of ice and snow. Near that was Vartalheim, the land for dwarfs who were the best classmen. The darkest pit there was Helheim. It was where the dishonorable dead would come to live. Alfheim was the home of elves or demigods. Muspelheim was now the home of fire giants. The last two realms, Asgard and Vanaheim, were both realms of gods. Asgard for the Aesir and Vanaheim for the Vanir. The two sets of Norse deities were the Vanir, which is associated with earth and fertility, and the Aesir, which is associated with the sky. The Vanir were led by Freyr and Freya, brother and sister, and also king and queen. They were the children of Njord, god of the sea. Freya is the goddess of love. She has an amazing feathered jacket and a cat-drawn chariot. Another Norse god is Heimdall, also called the White God. He is associated with the sea because 9 waves birthed him. Heimdall was the sentry of the gods and the archenemy of Loki. The Aesir was led by Odin, the father god who was associated with war and poetry. He was also a wizard who swayed battles through magic. He sacrificed his eye and hung himself from the world tree and rebirthed as a wiser god. Odin was married to Frigg, a goddess of marriage and motherhood. Odin's children were Thor, who is the god of thunder and has a hammer called Mjolnir, which symbolizes fertility. Baldur, the god of light and purity, was killed by Hodor, his blind brother, and Tyr, who is identified with war and justice. Hermod the Bold was sent to retrieve Baldur from a city in the underworld, Niflheim, which was ruled by the goddess Hel. She was the daughter of Loki, who also helped kill Baldur. Loki is a trickster. He's also a thief. He's the father of several monsters, including the world serpent Jormungand, the Wolfenrir, and Hel. While known for their fearsome riding, Vikings also had a strict legal code with certain elements of democratic governance. There are other gods in the Norse pantheon, but they don't really feature much. Bragi, a son of Odin, was another god of poetry, while Ul was concerned mainly with archery and skiing. There's Vali, who avenged Baldur's death, and Vidar, who avenged Odin's death. The Norse goddesses are relatively minor figures in the myth. The Vanir and Aesir warred, but eventually reconciled, and the Vanir came to live in Asgard, although they also have their own realm in Vanaheim. This war may reflect a time where there were 2 competing religions among the tribal people of the north, which eventually teamed up. Vanir and Aesir, stronger together.
Welcome, Vikings, the explorers and conquerors. In this presentation, you will set sail on your own and explore how Norse mythology influenced today's society. Brace yourselves, Vikings, and enjoy the journey.
Hi everyone! So today, I will tell you a story about the Egyptian book. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who wanted to go in Egypt. She wanted to see the perfect triangular pyramids, so she would always bring her bike on the highest peak of the city and ask the stars above the night skies to give her money and let her ride on a plane. One night, the star went to Earth and talked to the little girl. "You wanted to go to Egypt, right, little child?" "Yes, Mr. Star. However, I don't have a lot of money and airplane," said the little kid. "No, child. All you have to do is to open the portals of this book at night, and it will bring you to Egypt. But you have to make sure that everyone was asleep before entering the doors of Egypt. Do you understand?" Mr. Star said. "Okay, Mr. Star. Thank you for giving me this book," the little child replied with a smile on her face. At that night, when everyone was asleep, the kid opened the book of Egypt, and there a sudden light came through to shine on her face, and she felt the cold and howling wind. Later, the child disappeared. The kid, with her doll and luggage, reached her dream destination, the land of Egypt. All of a sudden, a jinn appeared in front of the kid. "Hey kiddo, I will be your guide on your Egyptian journey. Hi, I am Jinn. In Egyptian mythology, I am the one who pops up in a bottle and will make your wish come true. Since you wanted to travel Egypt, I will explain to you everything. Now, your wish is my command," the jinn uttered. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Jinn," the little girl replied. The jinn continued to explain to the child that the Egyptian religion and belief were spread beyond the domain of Egypt through trade, notably after 130 BCE, when the Silk Road opened. This made Alexandria the epicenter of commerce for other cultures. The imperative aspect of Egyptian mythology was the eternal life after death concept. The reincarnation and benevolent deities, both Greek philosophers Plato and Pythagoras are believed to be inspired by the belief of Egyptians in reincarnation. What's more, religious cultures from Egypt were largely adopted by the Romans as they did from other civilizations. To the Egyptian, humanity's existence was believed to be only a tiny part of the journey to eternity. The deities and supernatural agents coordinated and ruled over the course of this voyage. The existence of someone in this earth was a part of the eternal journey. It was also an introduction to something bigger. The concept of the afterlife for Egyptian was a mirror world of one's life on earth, particularly one's life in Egypt. If one desired to enjoy the rest of his or her eternal journey, he or she was obliged to live that life correctly. According to the Book of the Dead, ancient Egyptians believed that the souls would face challenges in the afterlife, and the regular flooding of the Nile River was used as a metaphor in Egyptian mythology. Egyptian mythology places strong importance on the afterlife, and in Egyptian mythology, pharaohs were believed to be able to interact with gods. "Will I learn stories here from Egypt, Mr. Jean?" the little kid asked. "Yes, child. Along the course of our journey, you will learn stories from Egyptian folklore and mythology. You will read the story of the world's creation and the adventures of the gods and goddesses such as Ra, the sun god Hathor, and the cow goddess, and Thoth, the god of magic and the inventor of writing. It also includes the famous cycle of tales about the divine family of Orisis, Isis, and Horus that explains how Orisis himself died and then became the ruler of the realm of the dead. The folk tales, meanwhile, focus on stories of magic and supernatural, including the story of the deadly rivalry between the two brothers Anpo and Bata, and how they finally reconciled. You will meet monsters like Benu, the bird of fire, and El Nadaha, the girl who abducts men, and Sphinx, and many more. But you do not have to worry because gods and goddesses will guide you and hear your sincerest wishes along this Egyptian journey. You will also discover the symbols of the Egyptian mythology, just like the Ankh, the Eye of Horus and the Ra, Sesen, the flower, and a lot more. As the kid and the Jinn continued their journey in Egypt, the kid suddenly asked the Jinn, "Why symbols are important in Egyptian mythology?" The symbols represent immortality, resurrection, sorrow, and life. It explains life's adversities and events, little kid. The Jinn replied. Now, meet the gods and goddesses of the Egyptian mythology, little kid, the Jinn said. Most Egyptian gods represented one principal aspect of the world. Like, for example, Ra was the sun god, and Nut was the goddess of the sky. The characters of the gods were not clearly defined. Most were generally benevolent, but their favor could not be counted on. Some gods were spiteful and had to be replaced, such as Nis, Sekhmet, and Mut. They had a changeable characters. The god Set, who murdered his brother Reyes, embodied the malevolent and disordered aspect of the world. As the Jinn continued to explain to the child, he said, the physical form taken on by the various Egyptian gods was usually a combination of a human and an animal, and many were associated with one or more animal species, and an animal could express a deity's mood. When a god was angry, she might be portrayed as a ferocious lioness, and if she is gentle, a cat. The convention was to depict the animal god with a human body and an animal head. The opposite convention was sometimes used for representation of a king, who might be portrayed with a human head and a lion's body. As in the case of the Sphinx, sphinxes might also appear with one head, particularly those of rams or falcons. Many deities were represented only in human form. Among these were such very ancient figures as the cosmic god Shu of the air, Geb of the earth, and the fertility god Min, and the craftsman Ta. There were a number of minor gods that took on grotesque forms, including Bast, a dwarf with a mask-like face, and Tort, a goddess whose physical form combined with the feature of the hippopotamus and a crocodile. As the Jinn looked at the child was already tired, and so he said, "Open the book of Egypt if you want to know more, little kid. I am always here to welcome you," Mr. Jinn said. "I have to go back in bed now, Mr. Jinn. I will promise to see you again tomorrow," the little kid replied. And the star looked at the sleeping kid, who went back from her Egyptian journey. "You will meet the world, little kid. Sleep well, and always believe in magic," the star said, wishing that this little girl will remain as a kid forever. And that's the end of our story for today. But always remember that it is just the start of the world's journey of that little kid. So stay tuned. See you next time.
Ni hao! From the vast and rich myth stories from the West, let's sail down and discover myths from Asia too, particularly the Chinese myth. Chinese mythology is a set of stories, beliefs, and gods originating from ancient China. In ancient times, China is known as the land of the divine and home of the gods. Myths in China vary from culture to culture, and the most common myths came from the Han culture. How did it all start? In the beginning was a huge egg containing chaos and a mixture of yin and yang. For example, female and male, cold and heat, dark and light, wet and dry. Also within this yin and yang was Panku, who broke forth from the egg as a giant who separated the yin and yang into many opposites, including earth and sky. With a great chisel and a huge hammer, Fanku carved out the mountains, rivers, valleys, and oceans. He also made the sun, moon, and stars. When he died, after 18,000 years, it is said that the fleas in his hair became human beings. The Chinese say that everything that is Fanku, and everything that Fanku is yin and yang. Pangu. In the beginning, the heavens and earth were still one, and all was chaos. The universe was like a big black egg carrying Pangu inside itself. After 18,000 years, Pangu woke from a long sleep. He felt suffocated, so he took up a broadaxe and wielded it with all his might to crack open the egg. The light clear part of it floated up and formed the heavens. The cold turbid matter stayed below to form the earth. Pangu stood in the middle, his head touching the sky, his feet planted on the earth. The heavens and earth began to grow at a rate of 10 feet per day, and Pangu grew along with them. Pangu stood for another 18,000 years, so that the heavens and earth would never join again. When Pangu died, his breath became the wind and clouds, his voice the rolling thunder, and his one eye became the sun, and the other eye became the moon. His body and limbs turned to 5 big mountains, and his blood formed the roaring water. His veins became far-stretching roads, and his muscles fertile land. The innumerable stars in the sky came from his hair and beard, the flowers and trees from his skin, and the fine hairs on his body. His marrow turned to jade and pearls. His sweat flowed like the good rain, and sweat dew that nurtured all things on earth. Famous Chinese gods and goddesses. China is an ancient country full of mysteries, and many Chinese deities and immortals can be found in China. The ancient Chinese believed in these gods, goddesses, magical beings, dragons, and ghosts, and prayed to them for help. Guanyin, also known as Guanyin Pusa, in Chinese, goddess of mercy. She is considered to always help the distressed and hungry, and gives comfort and aid wherever it is needed. Jade Emperor, or Yu Huang Dadi in Mandarin Chinese, is considered the highest deity ruling the universe in Chinese Taoism. In Chinese mythological stories, he is the most powerful god and controls all gods from the Buddhist and Taoist and other religions. Jade Emperor is worshipped by ordinary Chinese people throughout all China. Wang Mu Yang Yang, or the Queen Mother of the West, is the highest goddess and is the wife of Jade Emperor in Taoism. She commands all female gods and is also a god of happiness and longevity, as has magic pills which can make people live forever. She owns a heavenly peach garden in which magic peach trees grow. The peach can make people perpetually young. Yan Wang is Chinese god of death who commands all the gods of the underworld. He has a filing book which records the life and death of every person. He gives appropriate punishment according to the conduct of each act during his lifetime. Long Wang, or Dragon King, is the Chinese god of the sea. He rules his own royal court and commands all creatures in water. The Dragon King also controls the rain and winds and can bring rainfall to the earth, according to the order of Jade Emperor. Nuwa is the Chinese goddess who created human beings. It was said she molded yellow mud into a figure like her, which was then alive and became the first human being. Nuwa is also known for mending the sky with 5 colored stones. Nezha is a great teen deity in Chinese mythology. Nezha was most well known for assisting Zhang Ziya against the Shang dynasty in the 16th century Chinese novel Feng Sheng Yan Yi. In Journey to the West, Nezha was a general of the heaven. She fought the Monkey King and helped him defeat powerful demons. Kai Shen is the god in charge of wealth in Chinese mythology. Chinese people, especially businessmen, often offer sacrifices to Kai Shen at home or shops, hoping to become richer with the help of this Chinese god of money. He is usually depicted in red clothes holding a golden rod. Chang'e is the Chinese goddess of the moon and the wife of Hou Yi, a hero who shot 9 sons in the ancient mythology of China. During the traditional Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival, Chinese people usually offer moon cakes and stare at the moon in hopes of seeing her. Other Chinese gods and goddesses: Yu Lao, Chinese god of love; Fu Xing, Chinese god of happiness; Gong Gong, Chinese god of water; Zhu Gilyang, Chinese god of wisdom; Tu Die, Chinese earth god; Si Zi, Chinese god of justice; Shen Nongxi, Chinese god of medicine; Hu Tianxuan, Chinese goddess of war; Si He, Chinese god of sun. Chinese gods and goddesses have changed over the millennial period we recognize as the history of China today. Scholars recognize 4 different types of Chinese gods, but the categories have a considerable overlap. Number 1. Mythological or heavenly deities. Number 2. Nature spirits such as gods of rain, wind, trees, water bodies, and mountains. Number 3. Deified humans, both legendary and historical. Number 4. Deities specific to the 3 religions: Confucianism, institutional or clerical Buddhism, and institutional or philosophical Taoism. It's not clear that God has the same meaning in Western minds as it does in China, since the word English speakers translate as God is Shen, which means closer to soul or spirit.
4 sacred animals in Chinese mythology have greatly impact on one's identity as a nation. They are the azure dragon of the east, the vermilion bird of the south, the white tiger of the west, and finally the black tortoise of the north. Famous myths and folklore. San Wukong. He is one of the main characters in the Chinese classic The Journey to the West. At first, Sun Wukong is a very naughty monkey, eager to take over the world, and it cost Buddha a lot of effort to tame him. He later becomes a loyal companion to the monk Xuanzang and his adventurous journey from China to India and back again. Chang'e and Hu Yi. Hu Yi had a potion to become immortal, but it was sufficient only for one. He did not want to part from his beloved wife Chang'e, so he made her look after the potion for him. One day, when Hui wasn't home, his student Fing Ming tried to steal the potion from Chang'e. She knew she couldn't defeat him, so she drank the potion and made her fly all the way to the moon, where she is still today, watching the world. When the moon is the brightest during the Chinese Moon Festival, you can try to spot her up there. The Jade Rabbit. Many stories are told over Asia about the Jade Rabbit. He became a companion of Chang'e and is often pictured next to her on the moon. He is closely associated with medical profession, frequently shown carrying a mortar and a pestle. The Weaver Girl and the Cowherd. Another rather sad love story is one of the Weaver Girl, Jennu, daughter of a goddess, and a cowherd, Nulong. They fell in love, married, and had children. But when the goddess found out about them, she banished them both to different sides of the Milky Way. However, once a year, magpies will help out and form a bridge between two lovers. The day is celebrated as China's Valentine's Day. Who in the Western world would have thought that magpies can be so kind? In China, they are even a symbol for love and happiness. The Legend of the White Snake. This legend has a happier ending. The story is set in the beautiful city of Hangzhou, famous for its lake. A white snake lived in the lake. She had gained magical powers and could turn herself into a human. She falls in love with a scholar, Shu Xuan, and after overcoming many obstacles, they finally convince the gods to bless their union. The Dragon. He clearly is a hero in Chinese mythology, the most powerful and divine creature, controller of water. Dragons were the symbol of the emperor, bringing luck and good fortune. It is said that the legendary Yellow Emperor turned into a dragon and flew to heaven when he died. The Guardian Lions. You might have seen them in front of houses, palaces, or temples, and they have been placed there because people believe in their protective powers. Often they come as a pair. The male is holding a ball that represents the world under his paw, while the female is protecting a lion cub. Nyan. There is a story to explain why Chinese New Year is celebrated with lots of noise. Once, there was an ugly, scary monster called Nyan who regularly came down from the mountains to hunt people. The villagers were so afraid that they locked themselves in their houses on the days it was coming. One wise old man in the village suggested it would be better if they stuck together and chased the monster away. So they did, with the noise of drums and fireworks. The monster was so surprised and afraid that it ran around until it was completely exhausted, and the villagers were able to kill it. This is how the first Chinese New Year celebration started. The name of the monster Nyan also means year in Chinese. How the Chinese zodiac started. Here is one popular version of how animals were allocated to the Chinese zodiac. The Jade Emperor announced a race for all animals to compete for 12 places in the Chinese zodiac. The rat was supposed to wake up her neighbor, the cat, in the morning, but simply forgot. The rat joined the other animals in the pace to the palace, climbing on the ox, who was running in front, only to jump up when they had reached the palace to become the first animals of the zodiac. It was followed by the ox, the tiger, the rabbit, the dragon, the snake, the horse, the goat, the monkey, the rooster, the dog, and the pig. The cat, however, arrived far too late and missed out. This is why cat hates rat so much that she will always try to kill her. Chinese myth influence to modern lives. 1. The effect of mythological thinking on Chinese population is respect for the past, worship of ancestors, attention to detail, high creativity, scientific potential, and the ability to model possible worlds. Number 2. Another reason mythology plays an important role is because it becomes a foundation for a lot of religions that are practiced. Number 3. Lastly, China's current lunar probe mission is named after the goddess Chang'e, who is often portrayed as beautiful, gentle, and romantic in modern media. The country's first ever moon probe in 2013 was called the U2 rover mission, after the mythological rabbit.
The Maya mythology may not be widely retold as Greek or Roman mythology, but the stories they left behind will forever be ingrained in time. With that, let's Let's travel back together to the Mayan Empire and unveil their fascinating stories to the world. Maya mythology is a part of Mesoamerican mythology and comprises all of the Maya tales in which personified forces of nature, deities, and the heroes interacting with these play the main roles. A wide-ranging mythology that includes all the tales of the Maya has been largely reconstructed through found iconography and variations of animal tales and folk tales, as well as fables and legends passed down through oral traditions. Like any other Mesoamericans, the Mayans believed that the present world is a series of creation. They believed that the creation was related to divination and magic. The Popol Vuh, or the Book of Community, is only one of the texts that narrates the Maya creation account, the tales of the hero twins, and the Kichi genealogies and land rights. In this story, the creators, Heart of the Sky and 6 other deities, including the feathered serpent, wanted to create human beings with hearts and minds who could keep the days. But their first attempts failed. When these deities finally created humans out of yellow and white corn who could talk, they were satisfied. In another epic cycle of the story, the Death Lords of the Underworld summoned the hero twins to play a momentous ball game where the twins defeat their opponents. The twins rose into the heavens and became the sun and the moon. Through their actions, the hero twins prepared the way for planting corn for human beings to live on. The Mayan mythology is fascinating on its own. The stories like the legend of the Alucias, which tells us about the mystical beings that since the beginning of the time take care of their owners. The legend of Ixtabay, a story that gives life to the liquor found in Yucatan Peninsula. The love story of Saknite and Kane, which is one of the many legends that explain the abandonment of the Chichen Itza, and lastly, the legend of Uxmal Dwarf, which is an unlikely king who built spectacular structures and made a city grow, serve a double purpose to remember the traditions of a civilization that continues to be alive and to shed some light on a culture that we are immersed in. Itzamna, the ruler of the heavens. He was designated as the king of the heaven and night and day. He aided the Mayan people by inventing writing, calendar systems, agriculture, sciences, and medicines. He was preserved as a cultural figurehead who lays down the foundations of a civilization that flourished later on. Ixchel, the Mayan moon goddess. She was often termed as Lady Rainbow and was associated with moon, weather, fertility, children, and health. She was known for her dual aspect as well. As Goddess Ai, she was represented as a young and beautiful seductress who espouses fertility, marriage, and love. In this aspect, she was associated with both lunar cycles and rabbits. On the contrary, as Goddess O, she was depicted as wizened old woman who had the power to both create and destroy the earth. She was portrayed with claw, fangs, and red body adorned with dead symbols. Kinich Ahau, the Yucatec Mayan sun god. He was regarded as an aspect of Itzamna, the aforementioned ruler of heaven. He was often represented with a hooked nose, squared large eyes, and even a beard. He was also associated with a jaguar as it was believed that the sun god transformed into a feline predator during the night. Chak, the Mayan rain god. He is an important deity in the agricultural civilization of the Maya. He was venerated as the god of the thunder and storms with one particular myth-based motif suggesting how he struck the clouds with jade axes to bring down the rain. Such actions nourished the crops and fostered natural cycle of life in terms of regeneration. Ymir Kashub, the Mayan god of flora. He was perceived as the essence or power residing within the crops that allowed them to grow, ripen, and ultimately sustain the Maya people. To that end, he was often associated with the maize god. In some narratives, he was also represented as the son of Cha, and they worked together to bring forth rain and crops for the agricultural folks. Yung Shimeo, the Yucatec Mayan god of death. The god, espousing the state of decay, was represented with skeletal mask, protruding belly, body adorned with bones, and a necklace bedecked with eyelash sockets. In some narratives, he ruled over the 9 levels of the underworld known as Mitnao, where he takes sadistic pleasure in extinguishing the very essence of souls by torturing them with fire and water. Yung Kaash, the Mayan god of forest Yung. Counted as one of the youngest Mayan deities, he was often represented with motifs of corn. He is not to be confused with the maize god, for his name suggests as the guardian of the forest and protector of wildlife, both flora and fauna. He is often depicted with an elaborate corn headdress and corn cob pots in his hand. Warakan, the Mayan god of storms and chaos. He was believed to be the primordial force unleashed by the dual divinities. Given his immense power and chaotic origins, Warakan was often associated with lightning, wind, and storms. Each time, the Mayan goddess associated with moon and suicide. She escorted those who suffered a violent or suicidal death to heaven, such as warriors and sacrificial victims. Suicide was considered as an honorable alternative to living and guaranteed passage into the paradise. She is represented with a rope around her neck, hanging from a tree, eyes closed and body partially decomposed. Akan, the Mayan god of intoxication, one of the Mayan gods who reveled in the boisterous celebrations and drinking. He is also a patron god of the Mesoamerican cocktail and possibly perceived as the divine party animal. Kukulkan, the plumed serpent. Closely related to the Aztec Quetzalcoatl or the Maya Quiché designation Gokumats, Kukulkan means feathered serpent. He brought cult of law, agriculture, fishing, and medicine to the Mayan people. He is often associated with being the god of 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water. But he is also a creator god and a god of resurrection and reincarnation, one of the gods that shaped the world and created human beings. Jaguar was seen as one of the rulers of the Xibalba or the underworld and as such, a symbol of the night sun and darkness. There were Mayan priests called Balam who officiated only in the most important ceremonies. For them, the jaguar represented the power. For Kamazots are huge bat monsters residing in the jungles between the Mayan city-states. Physically strong, they are more capable of ripping unwary travelers apart. They hunt small mammals and reptiles, but sometimes may attack larger prey. Nawal, an individual capable of changing their form into that of an animal, like humans where they came from. Nawals can be good or evil, or somewhere in between, either causing mischief or doing good. Vision Serpent. The serpent was a very important social and religious symbol revered by the Maya. Mayan mythology describes serpents as being the vehicles by which celestial bodies, such as the sun and stars, cross heavens. The shedding of their skin made them a symbol of rebirth and renewal. The Maya have constructed a worldview of the universe where time is cyclical and all things are interconnected. They were accomplished astronomers and developed several calendars based on various cycles including those of the sun, the moon, and the planet Venus. Their calendars serve a variety of purposes, both practical and ceremonial. People all over the world keep track of important dates for themselves, such as birthdays and anniversaries, by using calendars. Mayan texts also inspired stories in Charles Finger's tales from the Silver Lands and Miguel Angel Asturias' Men of Maize. Meanwhile, the striking figures of deities and myths of Mayan civilization can be found in archaeological sites. Some have become tourist attractions and educational centers.
These are only some of the stories and mythology of the Maya people. There are still wide arrays of texts and sources that can tell us more about Mayan civilization. Thank you for being with me